Hello, welcome to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt, and I'm a messenger with UNN, United Network News. We are the official news channel for a group called CARE, which stands for the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth. We are here to inform you guys, to empower you guys, and to help with the restoration of our beautiful planet. And we talk about the real news. This is stuff you are not going to hear anywhere else. And that's not just a one-liner that we say, guys. We have access to what was previously known as the Alpha system, which is an etheric system that gives us the highest security clearance on the planet. And we can hear meetings that other people are having without even going places. We don't even have to leave. You know, we can run operations. When I say we, I'm talking about Kimberly Gogan from the Office of the Guardian, which if you haven't heard our content before, you're going to hear a little bit from Kimberly a little bit later on in the podcast. And that's what we do. Our goal is to give you as much information about what's happening here on planet Earth so we can make decisions on where we want our Earth, our planet to go in the future. Because we are here to restore our planet, and it is going to happen. The deep state is trying their darnest to make sure it doesn't, but they will not be successful. You guys know the end of the story. The light always conquers the darkness, and that is what you're seeing unfold here in our everyday lives. So this is an amazing time to be alive. And if you aren't already, I encourage you guys to get active. So just listening to a podcast or watching our newscasts, that's one thing. It's important to stay informed, but restoring our planet, we need all of us to do that. And we talk a lot on our news, and we try to interview different people and talk about things to get you guys excited for where we're going. But it's up to you guys to explore your passions and to act on your passions, because that's why you're passionate about something. You're supposed to do something with it. And we encourage you guys to do that. If you want more information about who we are and what we do, please visit our website at unitednetwork.earth. Like I said, we have a newscast that comes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you are a member, you get instant access to all of our content that we put out. If you're not a member, that's okay. We do release our newscasts on YouTube and Rumble a week after they're released on our app. So what this podcast is we do a quick review. Well, maybe not so quick. Sometimes these episodes are like an hour and a half, but that's because so much is going on. We have so much to share with you. But I like to do a week in review of what we discussed throughout the previous week. So that's great for those of you who don't have a membership because you can get caught up. I also like to think of it as a way, like if you missed a newscast, and you're thinking about going back, and you're like, oh, let's listen and see maybe what was discussed on that newscast. Do I need to watch that, or should I just fast forward and go to the next one? Because I know your time is valuable. So we highlight the stories that we cover on our news. That includes our local stories as told through the eyes of our beautiful, amazing field messengers, which I'll tell you more about in just a bit. We've got stories where we talk about the new Earth and our incredible superhuman capabilities, which are now coming back online. We talk about regional stories and how it impacts you, the people. We're not interested in what, the governments are trying to do. Most of those people are just puppets anyway. But what are the stories you really need to know about? Because it could impact your daily lives. And we also have what we call the World Situation Report. And that's when Kim comes on the news and she updates us on all things that are happening throughout the multiverse. So Earth is really a big battleground right now. Like I said, a lot of stuff is going down, and the powers that were, because they're not the powers that be, the powers that were are trying to hold on for dear life. I feel like this is the longest death battle scene. Some movies, it just takes forever for the bad guy to die. That's what I feel like is taking place on Earth right now. And we try to update you as to what's happening because they put out what we call fear porn. There's a lot of fear porn out there in mainstream media as well as alternative media. There are good people, guys, on both sides, on mainstream media and alternative media, but they don't have good sources and they think they're doing the right thing. But what's happening is there's just a lot more misinformation and disinformation coming out to the public. And so if you want to clear through all the clutter, That's what UNN is all about. So I encourage you guys, stick with us. If this is the first time listening to us, we may say some stuff that you're like, wow, that seems a little bit out there. I don't think we've got too much to talk about today. Most of the World Situation Report is about the deep state. So nothing too off-worldly that might confuse or leave some people scratching their heads. But I encourage you guys with everything. Stick with us, ask questions, use your discernment. This encourages you to think critically about stuff. Don't just believe someone because they say it. And that includes what we talk about on UNN. Do your own research. Talk to other people. See what's really going on. See what really resonates with you. All right, before we jump into all of that, at least here in the U.S. where I'm recording, this Sunday is Father's Day. So I'd just like to take a moment and wish all the fathers out there a very wonderful day. Hopefully you're with your kiddos, or if your kiddos are older, hopefully you get a phone call from them, or, can connect some way, and wish you guys the very best. You guys are very important. Obviously, I'm married. I've got 4 kids, and so my husband is crucial for our family. And so I really appreciate all of his efforts, and I'm sure you guys are as well for your family. So thank you for everything you do. Let's do a quick coming up so you know what to expect in the episode. Okay, for our field messenger reports, we've got reports from Uganda, Spain, Romania, Norway, as well as the United States. In the New Earth, we are talking about leaving religious doctrine behind. Ooh, I know that's a hot button issue, isn't it? We're going to talk about a woman who started something called the Gentle Barn, which of course has to do with animals and rehabilitation. So we're going to tell you more about that. And what do trees want us to know right now? That may sound a little crazy for some people. Like, what are you talking about, trees? Well, trees are sentient beings, and they have a voice, and they want to talk to humanity. So we're going to learn a little bit more about what they want us to know. In regional stories, the main topics that we're going to talk about are healthcare and medicine, technology, and the food industry. And then finally, for the World Situation Report, I've got some sound bites for you guys. Most of the information that Kim went over this week is about what the deep state is doing. They are trying to get access to money. They are trying to crash the US dollar. There's also a lot of talk of installing new currencies, of course, which fail every single time. And also alien tech that we keep uncovering different things. So that has really nothing to do with the deep state, but things that have been put in place for hundreds of thousands of years that we're coming across, all in an effort to make sure the light does not overtake the dark. So we're going to talk about a program that Kim found called Project X, because they love X, which stands for extermination, because that was their plan for us. But it's not going to work. So let's get to this. Today is June 15th, 2024. Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. So our field messengers are crucial. They're a crucial part of what we do at United Network News. These are everyday people like you, and they're showing us what's happening in their community. Sometimes the stories are a little bit more newsworthy. Sometimes they're more community-based. We love all of them. And really, this is an effort not only to share news, but to get to know each other a little bit better without some narrative telling us how we should feel about a certain country or a person or, a certain type of demographic or whatever the case may be. Let's just get to know each other as individuals again. And anyone can be a field messenger. If you want more information on this, you can go to our website, unitednetwork.earth, and learn more about it. You don't have to have any previous experience. You do need some sort of camera, which is, for most people, their phone, and just tell us what's going on. So in each newscast, we have a couple of different stories. On Monday, we had a report from Nabiryanet in Uganda, and she takes us through the process of making juice for her family. And I don't know if you guys have ever done any juicing. I've dabbled in this in the past. There is nothing better than fresh juice. And she squeezes juices together from fruits that are local to her area. So she's got passion fruit, she has pineapple, watermelon, and carrots. And, too bad it's not smell-o-vision or taste-o-vision, because it looked really good. So next story is from Namusis Janati, and she is from Uganda. So we had 2 stories from Uganda on the news on Monday. And she shows us her herbs and spices. I just realized I said herbs. It's like some people say herbs, some people say herbs. I'm usually an herb girl, but for some reason, herbs came out today. So she shows us the different spices and herbs she sells. And there's a ton of them, right? And it's all about enhancing food flavor. And these can also be used for medicinal purposes. And in the story, she also makes some herbal tea from it, which obviously can be helpful if you're not feeling so well. So thank you so much for that report. And then on Wednesday, we have Emma from Spain. I think Emma deserves some sort of UNN award. We have a few people that are always submitting reports. You guys, thank you so much for that. That is so helpful. So helpful. And so Emma actually has 2 stories in the news this week. This first one is about flamenco. So, you know, the dance, the art of flamenco, it originated from Spain. So she gives us some insights into the history. We get to see some really passionate people perform the flamenco. I don't know if you've ever seen anyone do that. It is very intense, I think is the best word for that. But that's what the area is known for. And so they were celebrating it, and she tells us a little bit more about it. And then, Monica's another one that deserves a UNN award. Monica from Romania. She has submitted several reports, and she does a story on the Danube Delta. Now, this is the 2nd largest river delta in Europe. It is known for its vast wetlands, its waterways, and reed bed. It is also great for viewing wildlife, so make sure you check out that report. And then on Friday, Emma is back with us. Even though she's from Spain, she was reporting from, I believe it's northern Norway. And she was talking about this iconic mountain. It is Norway's national mountain. It's known by climbers for its very unique shape, and it's very difficult to climb. So she just gives us a little bit of history of that. So you have to watch the story in order to see the unique shape. The whole time I was watching, I was like, there's no way. Can anyone actually climb that? It's like the mountain from Dr. Seuss. What is it? The Grinch. It's not that crazy, but it reminded me, it's like, can anyone really climb that? I don't even know how that's possible. And then our final story is from Ruth, and Ruth is in the United States. She's in California, and she gives us the story about preserving wildlife. So she went on this hiking event in California. It's on a family-owned ranch, and the family is helping to preserve endangered coho salmon habitats. So she takes it. So it's really cool, too, because the path that she goes through in order to find these salmon that are being rehabilitated, it's like there's cows grazing. There's just animals everywhere. It's really quite a sight. And so we learn more about their efforts to help with the preservation of this fish. All right, now it's time for the New Earth. This is a section of the newscast that is all about encouraging you guys to not just think about what's happening on our planet here, but where do we want to go next? What do we want to see on our planet? What about our natural God-given abilities that have laid dormant for so long? How can we bring those back? That's what this is all about. And we usually start with about a 5-minute interview. I interview different people about different things, and then we have some stories. So let's start with the interviews. On Monday, we had Kelly Bowker on the show. She is a channeler. And we've talked to Kelly in the past about different things, such as the light language that she speaks. So we have a segment out there about light language, which for a lot of people is going to sound like speaking in tongues. I think that was the last segment we did with her. But today, Monday, she was telling us her story about leaving religious doctrine behind. Kelly and I share a similar background of growing up in the church, and we both found our way toward Protestant, but also more Pentecostal there towards the end. And she talks about her journey a little bit, which I think a lot of us will be able to resonate with. I know I did. And, it's not really about following certain dogma or doctrine or whatever. It's about, connecting with Source, God, the Creator, in a way that makes sense for you. And it's just a beautiful story about her process and probably a lot of people's process as well. So be sure to check that out. Then on Wednesday, we had a new person. I haven't introduced you guys to this person before. This is Ellie Lax. She has a business called The Gentle Barn, and she has a fantastic story of how she started The Gentle Barn. And she loves animals, but it's so much more than that. Ellie went through a really hard time growing up. And it was, I'm not going to give away the whole story, but it was a hummingbird that basically, I don't want to say gave her the idea for the Gentle Barn, but made her understand how important life was and that important connection between animals and humans. And so what the Gentle Barn does, it does a couple different things. On one side, it rehabilitates animals that are considered unwanted. Okay, so that's how the animals typically come into the barn. And then once they're rehabilitated, then they can interact with humans that come to the barn. And, you know, humans are coming for various issues, and a lot of it mimics what the animal went through, you know, abandonment and, you know, issues of feeling, you know, depressed and lonely, things like that. And so she's seen firsthand how when humanity interacts with these animals, there's healing that happens, which is why it's called the Gentle Barn. So she just shares with us the story of how all of that came to be. And then on Friday, we had Kara Daniels. She's been on the show many times. She is an interspecies communicator, so she talks with plants and animals. And she did this whole segment with us about what the trees want us to know. Because if you don't already know, trees are very wise, and they have a very intricate root system where they can connect with all of nature. And they can go back really far because their roots run wide. And most people don't think about it that way, but the trees are very much interested in communicating with us now because as we talk about restoring our planet, they have a lot of information that would be helpful to us to be able to really define what are the issues and what's the best way to deal with that. So the trees have a message for us, and Kara brings that to us. All right, a few quick stories I want to tell you about as part of the New Earth. We talk about earthquake-trained rats. So this is kind of a cute story. Rats are being trained in Scotland to help in earthquake rescues. This is part of a project. It's called Hero Rats. Appropriate, right? It involves strapping tiny backpacks with different technologies onto the rats' backs, and then they send them into these mock disaster zones. And because the rats are small and agile, they can make it through the rubble. You know, when in an earthquake, you have a lot of rubble without triggering different landmines and, you know, collapses of different structures, things like that. And these little rats, they carry microphones, video cameras, and even location trackers to help guide them to people that need to be rescued. And then in Los Angeles, there is the largest wildlife crossing over a freeway, Los Angeles, California. And the whole purpose is to connect fragmented habitats. So this bridge spans an 8-lane freeway near Los Angeles, and it's providing this safe passage for animals to get from one side to the other. It's a 210-foot bridge, and it allows the animals to move safely between these habitats, linking to crucial biodiversity hotspots. About 1,500 wildlife passages have been built over and under major highways and rural roads across America. Isn't that nice? And our final story is about orangutans. So researchers have observed a Sumatran orangutan treating a facial wound with a plant known for its healing properties, which gives the orangutan a lot of credit, at least in humanity's eyes, because this is a very intelligent thing to do, right? The orangutan chewed on the plant and then applied ointment to a wound that it had. And again, it just supports the idea that orangutans have these cognitive abilities that allow them to, in this case, self-medicate themselves. Now it's time for our regional news, and we run a bunch of stories on each newscast in this section. So when I'm trying to compile this for the podcast, I group them together according to topics. And I see if there's any common topics that we, keep coming up in the news each week. And so for this podcast, we're going to talk about some stories in healthcare and medicine, technology, and then finally some stories out of the food industry. So let's start with healthcare and medicine. In England, the number of people waiting for routine hospital treatments for the NHS has risen significantly. So the NHS stands for the National Health Service. Their data has seen an increase in hospital treatment queues for the first time in 7 months. And they basically got backed up because of COVID, the whole pandemic thing. And then they have also been dealing with ongoing strikes by junior doctors. And there are even more strikes that could come out this summer. So there's not a lot of relief in sight. About 5,000 individuals have been waiting for more than 18 months for treatment. And in emergency departments, 26% of patients have been waiting for more than 4 hours to receive care. So obviously an issue there. Also in the U.S., the practice of charging facility fees by hospitals is being questioned as healthcare costs rise. So facility fees, it's basically they're being added to hospital bills, even for minor procedures. And people are concerned because it's increasing the overall cost of care. This impacts patients through higher insurance, premiums, and then, of course, just the direct expenses that you would pay when you go in for treatment. The people want reform. However, legislative efforts seem to have stalled. Also in the U.S., lab-developed tests that you can perform at home are surging despite growing concerns. So these tests are marketed as wellness tools, which if you classify it that way, it's allowing them to bypass strict FDA approvals. The FDA has raised concerns about the safety and reliability of these tests. They are now calling for stricter oversight. Advocates, though, say self-testing helps because waiting for conventional medical approval delays critical care. And then we also have some information about drug recalls, generic drug recalls, specifically for CVS. There are several pharmacies across the U.S., mainly CVS, but also Walgreens and Walmart, and they are currently being scrutinized over imported drugs that could pose health risks. So CVS admits they don't inspect factories personally. They rely on third-party audits. Walgreens says they visit their factories to check up on things, and then it's pretty unclear what Walmart does. I guess they're not really coming out and saying what they do. And we have on the news run various stories about alternative drugs and some of the issues and things being recalled. So this is more of a general story saying, hey, this is happening on a broader level. We're seeing this more and more. The FDA has raised concerns about the lack of oversight from contract manufacturers, citing instances of data falsification as well as unsanitary conditions. All right, let's move on to technology. And we're going to talk about a digital rights group, which is pushing back after Meta, the parent company of Instagram, Facebook, plan to use public posts to train AI tools. Users in the UK and Europe were notified that their public content, which includes posts, images, captions, comments, even their stories, could be used to develop and improve AI products, and that's supposed to be effective June 26. Critics believe this is an abuse of personal data for AI, and they have filed complaints. Meta says its actions are compliant with privacy laws and users can opt out, but there's also criticism of that. People are saying, yeah, you say that, but it's not too easy to opt out. It's actually very burdensome. All right, next story. In the U.S., the internet trade group called NetChoice is suing the state of Georgia over a new law targeting high-volume sellers on classified sites who accept cash payments. NetChoice represents companies like Meta, here they come again, right? Meta and Craigslist. They argue this law violates federal law. It violates the First Amendment, they say, and it's just overall, it's too vague. Advocates believe the law will deter organized thieves from reselling stolen goods online, but the law could also harm small sellers who rely on cash transactions. All right, let's talk about Adobe, which is a software company that a lot of people use. Photoshop is one of their big tools. So Adobe's recent terms update has caused widespread anger amongst professional users. The update seemed to imply that Adobe could claim rights over users' work, that users had no choice but accept the terms in order to continue using the apps. Many people were expressing their frustrations publicly on social media, which, is never good for the company. So the firm later clarified through a blog post that the changes were needed for some new features, such as filters, and also tackling prohibited content. The company claims they would never assume ownership of their work, but I think some things still need to be ironed out there, because just putting up a blog post isn't necessarily what people wanted from that. I think they wanted more explanation and perhaps for them to even change those rules, and I don't believe that's happened yet. All right. I also want to tell you about a new ride-sharing app. At least it's new to the U.S. It's a ride-hailing service, I guess is what they call it, called Black Wolf. It is expanding operations here in the U.S. The company claims to provide safer rides by hiring drivers with backgrounds in law enforcement, the military, and other security sectors. Riders can opt for screened drivers or even get drivers that carry guns. The service is now available in Atlanta, Miami, and Fort Lauderdale. And finally, we have a few stories for you out of the food industry. There could be a grocery worker strike coming up here pretty quickly in the U.S. There's 6,000 grocery store workers are now voting right now on a possible strike after their union contract with Food for Less, and if you don't know, Food for Less is owned by Kroger, expired. So their contract expired. And they're discussing, or at least we're discussing, various issues such as wage increases and benefits, which workers say have lagged behind other grocery stores for a while now. They are also pushing for better safety and staffing improvements. So we'll keep you posted on that. In Australia, dairy workers across the country will face some tough decisions as milk prices are set to drop. Many farmers are already struggling with the high cost and prospect of losing workers. Australia has been experiencing a decline in milk production for more than 20 years, and this price cut threatens the future viability of farms, especially those that are smaller and family-run. And finally, several major supermarkets in the UK have allegedly misled customers about the freshness of their bakery products. These supermarkets are reportedly labeling products as freshly made or freshly baked, despite many items being prepared off-site and then finished up in the store. So not created from scratch in the store, just maybe heated up or something like that, and that's supposed to be freshly made. I don't know. This issue affects consumer trust and could lead to legal implications for misleading marketing. As for the World Situation Report with Kimberly Gogan from the Office of the Guardian. So this was a week full of deep state shenanigans, which isn't necessarily my favorite news to cover. And I know the same for Kim as well. We wish we could just focus on the restoration of our planet and tell you guys about all the amazing things that are happening. But when we take down the deep state, that is for the betterment of humanity as well. So for those of you who really like talking about deep state stuff, this is the week for you. All right, so we start on Monday. Kim said that the deep state is essentially at a stalemate. Okay, nothing that they want to do is working, and their main prerogative right now is to get money. They've always wanted money and power. And they're trying their hardest to get control of the financial system, which Kim runs, and they can't. Now, in the past, and if you followed various alternative channels, you know that war has made money in the past, but you may not really understand the setup of this on the back end and how money comes into the financial system and how money would be paid out to groups of people literally for going to war, for following these orders and going to war. Now, the deep state thinks that that's going to work now. And what they don't realize is a lot of their overlords and people that were barking out those orders at them so many years ago, well, they're not around anymore, okay? They're gone, sent back to God's source, the creator. So they are not coming back. They are not going to save them. And for some reason, the deep state has a really hard time wrapping their brain around this concept. A while back, we talked about how Kim, now this was not reported in the media, but Kim declared global martial law. Now that wasn't because we wanted the militaries to overtake us and, a lot of stuff that's the white hats promote. Oh yeah, 10 days of darkness, military's the only way. That's not what we were going for with this. But we needed to allow certain groups of people to try to step up and see if they would do the right thing. So one of the things that Kim talked about on Monday is that this global martial law that no one reported about in mainstream media or alternative media is now over. And instead, we have a light system, a peace operating system in place. So that this part of it just happened this week. And this is part of our shift toward an asset-based systems. And this created a lot of changes in what the deep state is trying to do. See, they are trying to negotiate with one another and claim that they have these assets, claim that they have these bonds, and a lot of it is not real. So in order to take some of these things away, because they're really just lying to each other, they know that this stuff isn't real. They're just trying to get money and power. So in order to do away with this so we can move forward with the restoration, Kim switched us to a peace operating system. And here is a quick soundbite explaining what's going on.
So we are now under the light system's peace operating system. And when you are at a time of peace for financial system rules, that means that bonds no longer are able to be issued. Now, this is evident from some conversations that took place this weekend. Allegedly, a few things are going to transpire. So let me tell you about those. Supposedly, the Federal Reserve is getting ready to release some public information related to their viability and ability to manage the U.S. monetary policy. So we'll see if that actually takes place. There is also a negotiation going on for 5 board members to retire. Now, the reason why I believe this is going on is because the Treasury, run by the Order of the Black Sun, is supposed to, according to the order, take over for the Federal Reserve worldwide. So it's all for them, it's all about control of the financial system. Mm-hmm. But this also was semi-dependent on the fact that they were attempting to install the BlackRock and Citadel systems into the Treasury Department this weekend in an attempt to revive an old financial system or revive a new financial system using things that they can control. However, with that failure, will we see any public announcements? It's kind of like the same thing that they do with Donald Trump. One minute, they're going to start announcing he's this, going to pass away, all this kind of stuff. And that was actually discussed this weekend too, had they have been successful. Well, when there's no success on their end of it, they continue to use their cash cow and its name in order to generate what little funds they generate so they can continue operations. And I believe the same thing will take place with this whole Federal Reserve takeover of the Federal Reserve by the Treasury. But again, I understand everybody's having issues. I understand the other side is having a lot of issues. I'm still having a lot of phone calls with people I haven't talked to in forever, trying to be my best friend. So I know they're looking for information. I know they're listening to some of the phone calls I have in an attempt to try to see if there's anything that they can do on their end of it. Like if I mention a system or something like that they can actually take over, or what can we do to go it alone and fix things on our side? Will she give us any information? Well, I may be blonde, but I'm not dumb. So I give them exactly the information that I want to give them to make them go hunt and peck somewhere. Right. BlackRock, Vanguard, I know about all those systems that used to exist. I know what they were tied to. I know the base operating system behind it, and it's just never going to work. And now that we've reversed out the original ties to the old global martial law, the standing orders, the monetary system connections to intelligence systems and military systems and all of that, in fake money, because there are no allocations for that money, they won't ever see any of that either. But government's ability to issue new bonds, not just based on liquidity like we did before, because they were showing fake numbers on screens and trying to bypass it and use loopholes for a long time. Not only that, but now bonds are not valid in the financial system anymore, especially government bonds and military bonds and military vouchers. They use Department of Defense vouchers a lot to factor against to get equipment and those types of things. So we won't be seeing any more of that happen, and the allowance for credit lines against those things.
So is the point in doing that to really get rid of things they could use to kind of fool people and just kind of continue this charade? Is that the idea? Well, the idea behind it is, their predominant way of bypassing the fact that they don't have allocations at this moment is to show some kind of an asset. It can be something from old paperwork, from old Chinese elders from 1975, and they're just showing it on their balance sheet as an asset. And this is for governments predominantly. Everybody else just gets a whole lot of promises and absolutely zero delivery. So the issues that they're running into is, as an example, there were many people that do not work for the U.S. Treasury Department in the U.S. Treasury yesterday trying to issue, or over the weekend, I should say, several times, trying to issue Treasury bonds from old matured bonds because the numbers are still valid. That's one of the tricks they're trying to do, or trying to extend those bonds for another 10 years or whatever it is, just so they remain an asset on hand. That did not work out. They couldn't validate the numbers anymore for the old bonds. They were just simply not in the system. Or some of them that were still in the system. So, for example, maybe they, matured within the last few weeks or something like that. They tried to replicate those. So if there was one, say, $1 billion bond that the Treasury Department had issued, they would try to issue another 100 billion, $1 billion bonds over and over and over again. They also tried using the old assignments that I had done. Remember, I showed you that in 2022, I think, and I can revise that. But remember, I was showing on the screen, it was bond after bond after bond that I had assigned to the Federal Reserve, to the Treasury, to the military. They were trying to re-up those without my consent as well this weekend. God bless them. God bless them. Yes, the deep state is definitely grasping at straws. Like I said, the longest death scene a movie has ever had. And this is definitely a movie. Not necessarily what the white hats call a movie, but this is definitely a movie. They have never played a real war before. They have never had a real war before. So everything's been staged in one way or another. Real people die in wars, but it's the same people controlling the top. So now they have a real adversary, and they're not holding up very well. The other thing that Kim mentioned on Monday, which I thought was interesting, if you have checked out the alternative media, no doubt you have heard the name Rothschild before. Well, there is a new head of the Rothschild family. Those guys are going down like flies, super fast over there. We hear that he is in his late 30s. So for those of you that don't know, before age 40, like that's when they're kind of considered an adult and can really take the reign. That's when they do a lot of their rituals, satanic rituals, and kind of get in the club, so to speak. Well, Philip has, that's his name, by the way. There's the new head of state. I let the cat out of the bag. Philip apparently is in his late 30s. And according to Kim, he does not understand how the world works. This is a silver spoon baby kind of situation. The people ahead of him, above him, or whatever are gone. And now he gets to put on his big boy pants and show the family what he's got. The problem is, if you've never really lived in the world and if you've never really run operations and controlled things, you're really just playing dress up. And that really seems to be what this character Philip is doing. He doesn't know how the world works, and he doesn't know what tools the deep state still has in their tool bag, which is getting smaller and smaller by the day. So just know that. We're going to talk about Philip a little bit more in just a bit. Okay, on Wednesday, this was a very interesting day, a very challenging day, I think, for Kim, a very long day. And Kim actually didn't make it to the news in time. So we record the news in the morning, my time. I'm on Pacific time usually. So we record the news in the morning, and then we check in with Kim and see where she's at. Do we need to wait a little bit before we record her portion of the news, because she's always doing something. And so we waited for a little bit on Wednesday, and then Kim ultimately said, okay, I'm just going to record this later. So I watched with all of you as to what actually happened on Wednesday. I just knew things were really crazy. So Kim talks about a bunch of stuff here. I'll try to go through some of this pretty quickly. There is talk of BRICS dropping the US dollar in favor of a few different things. On Wednesday, she was talking about the Ripple coin. And the whole goal behind this is to separate themselves from the dollar. Of course, there's a lot of people out there who want to crash the dollar for their own personal reasons. They've been promised power and things like that. And so crash the US dollar. That's like the big thing. Even from people within the US, this was part of a long plan to hand over power to China at this time. It's just not happening the way they want it to. So there's talks of this happening. The Ripple coin isn't going to go anywhere. Again, you can't install a new currency. It's simply not going to work. Kim also addressed this rumor about Russian ships off the coast of Florida in the United States. Those are not Russian ships. Those are actually U.S. ships. So the U.S. is in those ships. And apparently they have some old warfare, Russian warfare they got their hands on. And this looks like they could have been trying to stage something like, oh, Russia attacked the U.S. So kind of along the whole, World War III plan. Nothing like that has happened yet. Who knows if they're going to get commands to do whatever. But just so you know, no, those are U.S. people trying to stage stuff. So, never mind what the headlines are telling you. All right. Also, they are talking about a possible regime change in Iraq. There are large pallets of cash that have been exchanged in order to make this regime change. Because, of course, people got to get paid. This is, money. For the love of money is the root of all evil here. So you have these large pallets of cash, but the allocation numbers, which are different than the serial numbers, the allocation numbers are on the back end of the financial system, and they have to match what's on the money, or it can't get put into the system, right? This is how you track things and make sure everything is legit. Now, most people don't know you have to have these allocation numbers. They just think serial numbers and, governments print money and the mint and, inflation is what they think of. But there's a lot more to the story. Now, these large pallets of cash cannot be used. They cannot be verified. They've actually, the assets behind them, it's already used up. So what they were planning to do with this is something different or something similar to what we talked about before with the president of Iran in that helicopter crash. As we told you before, that did not happen the way they said it happened. In fact, the president of Iran is in another country right now and living it up. He is not dead. He was promised a lot of money in order to do this. Who knows if he actually got that money? And they were planning to do something similar because they wanted to take over Iraq as well. And, similar to what's going on in Iran. So anyways, the large pallet of money, that was not cashable. So who knows if they're going to try to do anything in Iraq. But if you start to see headlines about a regime change in Iraq, no, this was part of the plan. There are also some rumors floating around about Trump, Donald Trump, who's not really Donald Trump because the real Trump passed away a couple years ago due to a heart attack. But there are rumors that the operatives behind, Kim calls them Duck Dynasty because apparently they're pretty rugged, guys. They're pretty rugged and don't really see things through very well. But they are talking about a possible heart attack with Trump in the media. And they want to have this really, by the way, it would be a fatal heart attack. And they want to have this elaborate funeral. They say it's going to rival Elvis's funeral. It's so weird, you guys. Possibly between June 17th and the 22nd, which just so happens to be solstice time because that's what the deep state does. They're even talking about spending $5 billion. How in the world where are you going to get this money from? You can't even fund governments. This is how far out there they are. It just doesn't even make sense. But if you see some stuff like that, that's what's going on. Apparently, they want to have a big funeral for Trump, even though he's their cash cow. Kim also mentioned that she took down communication lines for their Order of the Jesuit. Their communication line is now dismantled because they were talking about a lot of this stuff. And she's like, you know what? These people don't even need to have access to talk to each other. This is all ridiculous nonsense. And we don't need it anymore. So she took down their communication line. There was also a backdoor monetary system to go along with that. That is down as well. Same thing with the Knights Templar. They had their own communication and monetary line. That has now been dismantled as well. So basically, people are, with the exception of the crazy people that want to have a glorious funeral for fake Trump there, most of the deep state is just going after assets and gold. And they're trying to regain some sort of resemblance of control. Kim mentioned on Wednesday that, okay, this goes back to our Philip Rothschild character, right? This is the 30-ish whatever guy, hasn't had his rituals yet, but thinks he's hot. You know what? Okay, well, so he connected with Kim on some level. He claimed he wanted to restore balance. So if you guys have been following us, you know that in the past, we have needed balance, a balance of light and dark. We are no longer in that time period. We are now in a golden age, and we are moving completely to a light system. We're almost at 100%. We're very, very close to having a complete light system. So, of course, your opponent is going to come out and say, hey, remember when we were talking about restoring balance? Yeah, I know we never did that. I know we never played by the rules. But now that the tables have turned, I'm thinking that 50-50, you get 50, I get 50. That sounds pretty good. The problem is with this Rothschild character is that what he's telling Kim does not match his orders that he's putting out there. So he's talking about pandemics in these orders. He's talking about transfer of power of different countries and, staging all this stuff and all the lies that are going to go out through the media. So sorry, Mr. Philip Rothschild. As Kim said in the news, we are not interested in what you're selling. We've been there, done that, and we are done. We are moving forward with the restoration on our planet. Either you can join us or you can go back to source. Those are your two different options. The soundbite that I want to play for you guys is about another program that Kim found, and this is from the Abraxis. And This also kind of ties into this idea of going back to power being 50-50, which is what Philip Rothschild was talking about. This is, of course, called Program X because they love to call everything X. And there is no coincidence that everyone's favorite Elon Musk switched Twitter to just being called X. By the way, X stands for extermination, guys. That's not a joke. That's a real thing because that was their plan for us. So I want to play this soundbite for you about Program X and what Kim found.
And I know I say this every year, but I'm going to say it again. So from the 1st of June to the 13th of June are my hell weeks or rush weeks or whatever you call them when you're becoming a Navy SEAL, whatever you call them when you're going to be applying to be in a fraternity. It's the same thing. It's hell week for me. It's 2 weeks of hell, and usually if it could go wrong, it will go wrong during these 2 weeks because someone somewhere saw in Project Looking Glass that on June 13th, I concede to their side. Well, no. Still hasn't happened, and this has been going on for a decade. I have survived 10 years now of hell weeks, so we're going to survive another one today. Okay. But today was something a little bit different as part of Hell Week, which was more important at that time than stopping and taking a break to do the news, because this was a pretty rough program that was being run. And it wasn't being run by humans. It was actually being run by an automated system that was put in place a long time ago by the Abraxis for this particular year. Now, the other side believed that this event was going to happen at a time when the world was right about to flip to 100% source connection. And like I told you on the news, it's been teetering a little bit, but we're right there. There were some events that happened yesterday that kind of catapulted us further a little bit faster than I had expected. Which is good. We're still not at 100% based on what happened today. So the program, I know you're going to be shocked when you hear this one, is called X. Well, it appears the deep state was under the impression that once this X program, and X stands for extermination, launched today, that there would be more hope for them to gain some control over the world back. They were under the impression that System X was supposed to take over. This was another AI system that was supposed to take over for Omega 1 and 2, Chronos 1 and 2, and Alpha 1 and 2. That's what they thought was going to happen today. But that was never the case. X stands for extermination. So the idea that the Abraxis had was not to so much take over systems in part. The idea was to actually bring us back to a 50-50, so a neutral age, a neutral way where the light side and the dark side had 50-50 power. However, by the actions that the humans on Earth took today, who are still what you would consider Abraxis bloodline that are left, like global headquarters, some of the operatives, militaries, those types of things, they were still planning on trying to dominate everything. Therefore, Program X, or AI, XAI, actually went horribly awry today. And I would say there was some intervention to make that happen. But that was only part of the story of X. So after XAI did its thing, meaning exterminate us again, this would have been not quite a harvest, this would have been an extermination. And its goal was to exterminate all life on Earth. That includes these people, if they didn't comply with what was supposed to happen. And we were supposed to all get along for 50-50. So when it became apparent that that wasn't the case, they saw them as well as a threat to the 50-50 program, or the AI system did, and tried to annihilate them as well. So that didn't work out as well as they thought, whether they know it or not. Now, this program was designed to get rid of all humans on Earth and put Abraxis clones that were, let's just say, waiting in the wings in Aldebaran on the planet. Now, those clones would have looked exactly like all of we do because the program had been running to clone every new human that actually was born on Earth. So they would replicate us, but in their image, in the image of anti-source. Therefore, taking control of the planet to create only for anti-source. That was the plan. Next, when all the other programs started failing and all of the annihilation programs weren't working, it launched a backup system called a suicide program. So if you had weird feelings, sad thoughts, those types of things over the last 24 hours, it was probably the suicide program. The base route for that program was actually located in the Rock of Gibraltar, if you know where that Gibraltar is, right next to Spain. And that program kicked off with some really strange frequencies, some sick feelings, and those types of things were being reported everywhere based on the kickoff of this program. So the program ended probably midday my time today when we finally located the source of it. So that is now no longer there. Next, there were a few other things that the deep state tried to do. They, of course, thought that this was for their benefit because why? They think everything is for their benefit. You know, this was going to help them access alpha. They would have control of some money by the end of the day today. They weren't entirely sure when this was going to kick off. Therefore, they set meetings for yesterday and kind of preempted the kickoff. Those meetings they didn't end up showing up for anyway, which is true to form. And again, nobody got paid, nobody came to the call, nobody answered the call. But they were definitely expecting to get some control over the monetary system from X. Probably because the Abraxis told them that they would preserve their bloodline on this planet. However, X wasn't programmed to do that either. They were told that they would then continue to be fruitful and multiply with the Abraxis clones, and then the Abraxis bloodline would be the only one on Earth. Next program that launched as part of the end phase of X was a program where we all ended up with what's called a membrane. So the membrane was designed to reclaim the assets of Earth that we took away just a couple days ago. It was meant to reclaim them in the name of anti-source, and therefore we all ended up for a short period of time today in what's called a Faraday cage, and so did Earth itself. So if you felt a little anxious, if you felt a little claustrophobic, these are the things that are being reported. If you felt like you had extra gravity, you were being drained of your energy, this was the beginnings of the ownership of you. So they were going to drain your life force one way or the other, along with the life force of Earth. This was the end part of the X program. And backup program after backup program after backup program happened pretty much all day today.
Yeah, so very busy day for Kim. The news got out a little bit later than normal, so sorry about that, guys. But sometimes, you just don't know how the day is going to unfold, but we really appreciate Kim hopping on later and giving us an update. Okay, and then Friday, I don't know if you guys felt a little bit off. And I know Kim talked about this, I believe, on Wednesday, those feelings of anxiousness. I was feeling so crazy at the start of Friday. I was like super anxious, super nervous. I felt it really like in my solar plexus. When we tried to record the news, oh my gosh, everything was going wrong. My connection, my phone connection, because I connect to Mike over the phone so he can tell me stuff into my ear, that line kept going down. My audio kept cutting in and out. We had to start and stop a million different times. Same thing happened when Kim got on the news with us because she was able to be with us when we recorded. And the deep state is pretty much just throwing everything at us. I had to shield up before I actually got on the news. So I spent some time with Source and shielded up. It was a little bit crazy. She started by talking a little bit more about Saudi Arabia, again, dropping the US dollar for other currencies. So that whole narrative is still being played out. You may see that in the alternative media. The G7, which doesn't mean anything, right? We know the operatives meet before any government, selected people go out and, pose for pictures. But the G7 is going on right now. And their whole plan was to announce this 7 world currency plan, which we've talked about, this idea not of like a one world government, that's what gets promoted a lot, but this other idea of breaking the whole world into 7 areas, and then each of those areas would have their own currency. Well, apparently, then this was handed out, by the way, this was not an idea from the deep state. This always comes from alien beings that are here to control us or whatever. Those beings are gone now. But the deep state is trying to pick up the pieces and go, oh, well, they told us this. And they're kind of making up the rules as they go, because this 7 world currency plan, they actually tried to tweak it and ended up burning themselves in the whole process. They kind of messed up the whole system. So if you hear talks about the Amero, this was supposed to be the currency for just North America. And they tried, what they wanted to do is make it the currency for North and South America. But that wasn't the intention behind the program. And if you don't run the program the way the aliens designed it to run, it's not going to work at all. Not even perfectly. It's not going to work at all. And so the deep state messed things up for themselves. Here's a quick soundbite of what happened.
So there's been a lot of chatter from New Rothschild guy. Philip is his name. Hi, Philip. Big shout out to you. And the 7 currency plan. Now, during this process, there has also been a lot of chatter this morning, let's just say, between people that I talked to that may or may not have been in the past connected to either the Rothschild family or global headquarters, Langley 5, about replacing the United States dollar. We're having a lot of technical difficulties here, guys. So if this is a little choppy, I am so sorry.
We're putting this newscast
The
together.
struggle is real today. The struggle is real. So thank God you're such a good sport, Sonny. And Mike is a good sport. And everybody else that's here with us right now. So I'm so sorry. And the intended currency this time, though, is the Amero. If you've been in the game a long time, you will have heard about the Amero. Now, the Amero is supposed to be a dollar. It was originally created to be the new currency for the North American continent out of the 7 currencies. But the Amero this time was actually supposed to be for both North and South America, as far as the behind-the-scenes negotiations that have been happening for the last 2 weeks. Okay. So when they tried to install the Amero, I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Now, the Amero is not a digital currency. It's digital and paper, just like the dollar is. And it was supposed to be structured this way.
Okay.
So I'm like, why is somebody trying to install the Amero? I'm like, are we really doing this right now? And then I started looking at the whole argument that happened yesterday between the Russians and the Treasury Department about not allowing them to have technologies and those types of things. And I'm like, wait a minute. Everybody's trying to install the 7 currencies. That's what's happening here. Because this morning it was just like a hackorama. Now, interestingly enough, though, there was some truth to what they were thinking or talking about, because Marduk is just like the gift that keeps on giving. It's just long after they die, and to be fair, I learned a lot from, having conversations with this lovely being in the times that I was speaking to him, because I too have done the same thing. Hundreds of years after my death, my system will still be running in the fashion that is going to protect humanity. So, I I did the same thing. I mean, not going to lie. Okay. But I learned it from him. So thank you very much, dead guy. But so the plan was handed down from Marduk to everyone else to install 7 world currencies.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as for the Middle Eastern currency, Saudi Arabia was supposed to be in charge. Hence the reason why they just announced today that they are supposed to be depegging from the dollar. Langley 5 is trying to convince everybody that it's a great idea to replace the dollar with the Amero. No, I know. God bless these people. But the negotiations that have been happening leading up to the G7, which is happening today, have been, they never just go along with a plan that's given to them by an alien race. They have to manipulate it to their best advantage, or try to in some way, shape, or form, thinking that they're going to be able to do it because their arrogance is disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
So the Amero was only supposed to be, as an example, for the North American continent. And I'm not saying I agree with this plan either.
Right.
But they negotiated with the whole South American continent to use the Amero as well. That's not what it was programmed to do. They just don't know a good thing when they've got it. Now, not like we were going to let this happen anyway, but it's the same negotiation and the arguments they're having with the Russians, because there was only supposed to be one European dollar. There wasn't supposed to be an Eastern European and a West European, but that's the way they wanted to do it. And they've been telling, the Americans side of the deep state has been telling everybody they control the technology to make it happen. And that is a full-on lie. Langley 5, that is you Langley 5 generals that think that you're in charge of everything, and you really don't know. I've listened to your negotiations with your gentleman from Alabama this morning, and you sound like you have never actually even balanced your checkbook, let alone tried to run a financial system, because I can tell you right now the things that you were saying were ridiculous. So the Middle Eastern currency was supposed to be run by Saudi, which means that there was a system that was supposed to be triggered that Marduk left in place to pull together a basket of commodities that would then go to back, and its respective production contracts, which would then go to back these new 7 currencies.
Mm-hmm.
But by twisting around the world to suit your needs, you defaulted the program anyway, and I didn't even have to do anything, because you people don't understand. You don't control this technology. You don't even understand, for example, that the motherboards for this technology are not even on Earth. And it's a consciousness. That's how quantum AI works. The source code for it is a consciousness. It has its own consciousness, your little global asset pool, stuff. And needless to say, it wouldn't have worked anyway, because we already have the global asset pool. So the second they tried to put in some kind of, Saudi Arabian contract or Middle Eastern contract or whatever it is, it would have failed. And if you tried to use oil in Brazil to back the Amero, it also would have failed, because it's not programmed that way on a consciousness sentient level, albeit dark and evil. Now, regardless of the movement of the 7 currencies, one thing was abundantly clear. As each system attempted to launch and then kind of fizzled out within a few minutes this morning, the systems always defaulted to Marduk. Mm-hmm. In other words, yes, there were 7 asset pools and maybe 7 currencies. However, they all went into a major global asset fund and a major currency control system, which were not controlled by human beings and would have never been controlled by those people had this plan worked out. Sure, they were allowed some kind of a management system. Now, if you've ever worked for another company in your entire life, you know that the managers maybe oversee a department or maybe even one particular location, but they don't own the company. Now, Marduk always puts himself as an owner, and he always puts himself in the position to fire the final key, the final step, the standing order, whatever it is. But in the when he is absent and no longer with us, there's no one left to pull the final key or push the final button but me. Mm-hmm. So I looked at this and went, oh, heck no. Delete. And that was the end of that. So there was a new point of sale system, a new international financial transfer system. But the reason why it had to go was because we already have all those commodities backing all the current currencies that we have out there, to which you are the beneficiary. I can't flip over the whole system, and I'm not willing to do that for governments, for the order, for Rothschild, for Langley 5, or for militaries, or for anybody. Mm-hmm. This is the way it's going to be. If you don't want to respect the other 8 billion humans on this planet, you can get off it at any given moment in time. And a lot of you have. But this we are not doing.
That's right. This we are not doing. So sorry, Deep State. I know you had bigger plans, but you messed it up for yourself. Like, you really only have yourself to blame. So what do you do with all this information now, guys? As always, we encourage you to do your own research. Always keep an open mind. If something doesn't resonate with you now, that's okay. Maybe you're not meant to hear some of this information now. Just put it to the side. Maybe later on it'll make more sense. But keep asking questions, keep thinking critically, and if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with someone you care about. For more information about us, you can go to unitednetwork.earth. That gives you on-demand access when you become a member to all of our UNN newscasts, our complete world situation reports, and original series. You can also comment on the videos, and Kim and I try to hop on there and respond and clarify questions that you might have. You can also join our United chat, again, which is part of our app and our online community. You can follow us on social media. Go to unitednetwork.earth, and in the bottom navigation, we have all of our links there. And we have a great social media team that puts clips together. So if you want to share some of our content online, we would very much appreciate it. All right. Thanks so much for being with us today, guys. Again, thank you to all the fathers out there. Hope you have an amazing weekend with your family. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.